What's going on, y'all? This is June Archer. You're checking out the Winner Circle on thisis50.com. Ari Melber from the beat. Top 5 dead or alive. What is it?
Top 5 MCs?
Yeah.
We're getting right into it?
Let's get into it.
Well, home field advantage.
Yeah.
We put 50 just in there.
Okay.
And give me 6.
All right, I'll give you 5 more. What you got?
So we'll go 50 Cent,
50.
Jay-Z,
Jay.
Kanye West for
Kanye,
me.
okay.
Notwithstanding recent events. Tupac,
Okay.
Biggie Smalls, Lauryn Hill.
Keep it locked right here. We'll be right back. What's going on, y'all? I got my guy here, Ari Melber from the beat. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you taking time out on your busy schedule.
I could not be happier.
We're here.
Are you going to let people behind the curtain that we just walked into this room out of 50's room, which was for me a personal life highlight?
It was amazing. It was amazing.
Honestly.
After meeting him in person, after having the exchange online.
And no greater legal authority than Curtis Jackson has said, when the feds come in the game, loyalty is limited. And the question is, does Michael Cohen's loyalty change as he feels federal prosecutorial pressure?
Well,
He gonna snap. He gonna tell all of it. They gonna say, we didn't even ask you that, Michael. Why didn't you tell us that? He said, I just thought you wanted to know.
Okay, I saw 50 Cent made a video responding to my coverage of the FBI raid on Trump lawyer Michael Cohen's office, and here's what he said.
Ari, he liked Trump. Michael liked Trump, but he don't like him enough to go through that time for him. He ain't from the neighborhood.
And that's
How did you feel about that conversation?
I'll tell you, personally, I started listening to 50 Cent before Get Rich or Die Trying came out. Power of the Dollar was just moving around. I went to a show in Northeast Washington, D.C. around 02, 03, and there was a 4-hour delay before the music started. I don't know if you've ever been to that kind of show. Some shows take time before the artists come out.
I'm Jamaican, so usually Jamaican artists don't come out until 3 or 4 hours after.
Well, I'm told that in Jamaica they say, we run things, things now run we.
Yeah. And when it does happen, you said, no, gossa.
Wait, how's that one go? I don't know that one.
I'm going to teach you that
Teach
one.
me.
I'm going to teach you that
okay,
one.
so,
I'm gonna teach you that one.
so things were running the show, not the other way around at that particular time. But I will tell you this. 150 came out, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he was, if I remember, tank top, bulletproof vest, G-Unit group comes out, and it was like this energy filled the place. And I go to a lot of concerts. I see a lot of music, all different kinds of genre. This was like at that level. This was like that Aerosmith level, Smokey Robinson level, where you're just and so that's from then through his music, through we were just talking to him about his collaboration with Robert Greene. So to just have honestly the time to listen to him in person was for me was incredible.
All right, so from Seattle, living in Brooklyn. Went to University of Michigan, Cornell Law. How did you fall in love with hip hop? When did you fall in love with hip hop?
Do you have my Wikipedia page embedded in your brain? It's impressive memory skills. There's no notes here.
I do my homework.
It started at Garfield High School, which is where Quincy Jones went, and Jimi Hendrix, a big public high school in the Central District of Seattle. And it wasn't a choice, it wasn't a conscious thing. Rap was the thing. It's kind of like, you know, I host a news show, and sometimes when I quote bars, some people say, well, what is that? And it's so odd and weird. And so, it's not odd. The two biggest musical art forms in America in the last 20 years are country and rap. And rap's ahead of country right now.
Yeah.
So that's it. I mean, that's decades running. So that's what it was like in my high school. Everyone was into music, heavily into rap, and that's where you picked it up.
So for you, on the beat, when did you find the magic or that moment, that aha moment that said, you know, I could use these references because I have a love for hip hop, love for politics. When did you, or did you have to kind of say to the producers, hey, I have this idea?
You said magic. Is this like a magic stick reference?
Is he really what?
I'm just trying to follow. I'm trying to follow where your head's going.
All right. But when did you find that aha moment to say, you know what, I should use some of these references?
Here's the thing. Our job in the news, if we're doing it right, is to be accurate and explain things clearly. And so accuracy comes first. What do we know? What do we not know? Let's be honest about that. Sometimes you come out on a story and the first thing you have to say is, we don't know much about this at all.
Right.
And that's the job. Not to sound smart, not to sound cool. Here's what we know and here's how much we don't know. then when you get into explaining, you have to figure out how to communicate clearly. And there's nothing worse than knowing things and not being able to convey them to people. Because that's kind of like intellectual hiding, right?
Right.
So if you've ever been in a conversation, you go to a dinner party, you meet a doctor, obviously they know what they're doing, that's great. But whether they can talk to you is a separate question. And you get into a conversation and they don't actually convey things. So that's my job. So I'll reach for movies, I'll reach for music, I'll reach for bars. I guess you could say part of the aha moment was finding ways to contextualize things through the bar. So it's not just, you don't want it to be slapped on at the end, it's when does this help illustrate something?
Right, I think part of it is there is a group of people, there's a culture that we're not used to following politics. So I felt like it was pretty interesting, it was fun, it was witty. Are you to MSNBC that Stuart Scott was ESPN? Because the culture follows sports, but the culture is only now, I feel like, getting a hold of politics because of where we are as a nation right now.
I would liken myself more to like the DJ Who Kid to 50 Cent, but you're trying to take it to a sports. I'm just playing. I'm very flattered by that comparison. I'm certainly not there yet. This thing's gonna be on the internet, and there's gonna be a bunch of people in the comments going, well, I don't know this guy, but I know Stuart, right? So we're not there yet. But certainly, you're looking to communicate clearly and pull things, and not be afraid. Right. If I'm afraid that someone's gonna go, well, what do you know about this? Or is this really what you love, or are you fronting? If I'm thinking about that, I'm not living and I'm not working. Right. So I just have to put that out there. If people are feeling that way, great.
Doing my homework, I understood that you were not fronting. It wasn't this ploy to be cool. I mean, you had Prodigy on, you quoted 50. For me, he's a lover of the culture. I want to see how the magic came about, because some people will say, you know what, try this. I would try this, it might be great for you.
Right.
It'll be great for your career. I think you're coming up on a 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
I think you have longevity in what you're doing. I think it's organic. I think it's from the heart. I applaud you. For me, I think there's a culture of people. There are a lot of people who need to pay attention to what's going on. I am in a place where I would follow CNN, and of course, with propaganda out there and fake news, I wouldn't watch Fox. But now I found myself on MSNBC. Like, how do you say to certain individuals out on the street, say, listen, I need you to pay attention. Even if I'm not just getting you by my quoting rap lyrics and bars, like, I need you to really pay attention. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. Second of all, you're asking a fundamental question, which is what do we want to do in our society, in our community, about the issues we're facing, and how do we want to be informed? One thing I say to people, and I say this especially when I end up at universities or law schools, campuses, is that feeling of like, it's too confusing, I can't bother. That's how they want you to feel. There's a whole group of people that benefit from regular people, from the rest of us feeling like, maybe I can't keep up with this, or I don't really know how it works. So in the same way that a bank gives you that 3-page credit card explanation that it's not really written for you to understand, just so they can say they gave it to you, is the same way that Facebook says, just click here and you don't have to think about it, we'll own your data. Is the same way that there's people in politics that want to do that. And the Trump era obviously is a big test, because part of the form of the trickery is to try to show people, well, maybe nothing matters, maybe we can get away with everything. And what is that? That's enervating. That makes people feel weak. That makes people say, forget it, I'm just gonna focus on my life and my lane, which sometimes, by the way, everyone's been through periods in life where that's all you can do. But I argue to people, that's what they want, because things do matter and there is accountability.
Right.
And you mentioned journalism and what's being reported. I mean, just in the last recent period, you've had journalistic reports about negative things that Trump aides are accused of, that are ricocheting into what 50 and I have discussed, which is real federal pressure, people looking at real jail time, people pleading guilty. That's real. And on the flip side, to move away from Trump, in New York, where we're in, there was a Democratic attorney general. A lot of people thought he was a decent guy. He had certain policy positions. And journalists exposed that multiple women say he was domestically abusing them. That story came out one evening. By the next day, he'd resigned. right? So ask not only the women that he personally affected, but all the other women who would be obviously implicated in feeling like, how can you trust law enforcement if this guy's at the top? So that matters, right? Someone could say, oh, well, people always get away with it. Why even work on that? So whoever was working on that story, Jane Mayer, Ronan Farrow, these reporters, they spent a long time on it. They just changed law enforcement in New York. So that's my big picture. Things do matter, and you don't have to be following every story. You might be focused on the funding for the school in your community, or you might be focused on the presidential stuff. But if you get involved, it can change things.
I love that answer. For you, I believe you're gaining stride with gaining followers based on what you're doing. What do you say to the young people who are kind of adamant about not getting into politics because it seems so ugly these days? You obviously, to me, seem like you wake up and fall in love with it every day, especially being able to merge hip hop and politics. What do you say to the kid now that maybe graduating, this summer, is looking to do something, but politics may not be on their radar? What do you say to that kid?
Well, I would say, you got to figure out your own way. It doesn't have to be quote unquote politics. I mean, did Martin Luther King ever run for office? No. What would Martin Luther King's Instagram be like if he were alive today? I don't know. It'd probably be meaningful, also lit at times.
Yeah.
But it's hard to take some of these things and step back and say, well, if you don't like politics, or you think it's too expensive to run, or you think it's a lot of hype, then maybe for you politics is going to the PTA or volunteering in your community or being informed and checking people. I mean, there's a lot of cultural change that's going on right now. Do we call that politics? I mean, there are jokes that people would have made when I was in high school that just would fly by. And today you might hear that and say, wait a minute, even within respect, I respect you, but like that joke you just made, or you think it's a joke, is really demeaning to people, and we're having those conversations, right? Together, that's also part of it,
Jay would say, I'm making short-term goals when the weather falls. What are your goals now that you're coming up on a year with the beat?
I mean, look, I would say if we're doing Jay, I'm trying to make me and the beat go together like Nike Airs and crisp tees,
I'm a businessman, not a businessman.
Not a businessman. We'll do this all day, but eventually, I just keep thinking about the comment thread and how I'm just gonna get flamed and roasted. And it'll be like, you know what? Twice was enough. 4 times was way too much. So when I was literally just talking to 50 about this, something he said years ago. I was listening in an interview he did on Hot 97. He said, artists think that getting an album means you made it.
Right.
And it doesn't. Getting an album is just the first chance to see whether people even like your music. And news shows are not as fun as music, so we're not at that level, but I certainly think of the fact that I am trusted by my bosses, at least today, to go out and do the show tonight. That's a chance to see whether we earn the trust of the rest of the audience and people like it. So we started as a rookie show no one had heard of.
Right.
I'm out there every day trying to prove it to people. What's my goal? My goal is long term to have the beat be a place where people want to come and have these discussions about law, about criminal justice, about politics, and yes, about the culture. The culture is not over here.
Right.
The culture is within all of this. So, example is we've had Rev Sharpton and ASAP Ferg to talk about the Meek Mill case while he was incarcerated on this offense. Okay. Now he's out. I want my show to be a place where people go, oh, of course you got to go on the beat and talk about that. And not competing with other spaces, because he's obviously always going to be in the music space, but to have that be that, and have that for obviously senators and candidates when they want to make their case, but also for people in the culture.
Is there somebody that is off limits that you will never quote bars from?
I mean, it would take a lot for me to move into like a Bubba Sparks situation, and that's no disrespect, it's just that would take a lot.
That would take a lot.
Who else? I mean, you don't want to offend people. You're asking for like a no-go zone.
Yeah, all right. So we won't go there. But
I'll tell you someone who I respect, but I wouldn't probably quote.
Who's that?
Is Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, I want to quote Mark.
Now, shout out to Mark Wahlberg and what he's done with his career. Hilarious and sometimes serious acting. Right?
Yeah.
But if we go back to pre-Mark Wahlberg, to a little something known as Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Yeah.
Less likely to quote that.
Yeah. How about Ice Baby? Anything from there?
I have a confession. I have quoted Vanilla Ice on television, so that happened.
Shout out to Vanilla Ice. How about Hammer? Would you quote Hammer?
I mean, I would be more likely to quote Jay dissing Hammer. 30 million, Hammer can't touch me.
All right, so now that we go there, what's the
I feel like are you gonna get me in trouble?
No,
Am I gonna
no,
get
we're
in
good,
trouble
we're
there
good.
this area?
What's your favorite diss record?
Woo!
Hot seat. Come on, Ari, give me something.
I think, although it's recent, and although, you know, a lot more serious stuff has been going on that we were covering in this space, I think Drake's back-to-back was pretty devastating.
Okay.
But if you want to go like the worst ever, I mean, if Faye had twins, she probably had two Pacs. Get it?
Two Pacs.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
by the way,
that
and that's breaches a line. I mean, I'm not
That does cross the line.
I'm not co-signing that kind of talk.
Right.
But if you're asking me, just like you're asking me about the worst gangster shooting scene in Scarface, I'm not co-signing that. But yeah, it's a severe scene. I mean, when Biggie did that, that's a line.
That's a line.
That's a line.
So this is a game called University of Dope. Here's a question. One gotta go. Jay, Biggie, Nas, or Tupac? Who would you get rid of?
Why does one have to go?
One gotta go. One gotta go, Ari. Who would you give up?
Now, let me just say, this is and you're a good interviewer, I'm gonna say that. This is a thing interviewers do, where they get you into this corner. This is like when people are pressing Lil Xan, what did I say his name? Lil Xan.
Lil Xan, yeah.
Lil Xan. It's a stupid name, so it's hard to say. And they're like, Lil Xan, talk about Tupac, and he's like, oh, and it's like, they're just setting him up.
Right.
They're just setting him up for that. Now I feel set up. This is what I will say on, because I want to answer your question. On a level of productivity, right? I think Nas is rightly celebrated. I have said Illmatic's one of the best albums, and that makes me like everybody else. Sorry, 5 mics. On productivity, you could argue that the later work is not at the same par, and so by that standard, you could say you take him out. But then you got a big asterisk, because sadly, you're comparing people whose lives were cut so short, we don't know what their later productivity would be like. So I sort of answered your question, but I also lawyered the hell out of it.
No, you did, because he is a lawyer. Are we going in the right direction politically as a country?
So here's the way I would look at it. We had an election, and the person who got more votes didn't become president. And this is like the second time this has happened recently, and we barely even talk about that.
Right.
The actual systems of democracy in this country are under severe strain because of the Electoral College and the vast differences in where people live today, which the founders didn't really think about or predict, and the complete domination of money in politics, which rightfully makes people feel like, what's the point? And maybe the banks own a lot of both parties. And then you get into the media saturation and the celebrity, domination of the conversation. It's not just whether you agree with Donald Trump or not. It's also that Donald Trump is eating so much of the conversation.
Right.
And that applies to us in the news for sure, and I've done, I've tried to talk about that and deal with that in the way I can, but it also applies to social media, and also applies to how we all decide what we react to. And that's a huge problem, because not only is that him dominating the conversation, but think about how many important police brutality and excessive force and police shooting stories were out there, and now they're less on the news, they're less even sometimes in the conversation, but they're still happening. So some of that's on the powers that be. I mean, I don't blame the community for the Electoral College.
Right.
I blame the founders. They got some things right? It was like, they were really smart about like checks and balances, but they were like really bad at racism. So, and they were really smart about setting up a court system that's still, with all of its faults, was better than everything else at the time.
Okay.
But they were really bad at this Electoral College, where, people in other countries think it's crazy that Donald Trump came in second and becomes president. And then the country kind of goes, I guess we don't even want to talk about that, because it's actually too disturbing to understand. And there are ways to long-term reform the Electoral College. So I think our political system is under tremendous strain, and the scary part of the period we're in is we don't know how it ends. Does it end with our democracy in a significantly weakened state, or having a president get away with what Nixon tried and failed to do, which was to so thoroughly undermine the independent justice system that you have leaders who are above the law. If leaders are completely above the law, and I don't think this is a controversial statement, then you're not really living in a democracy anymore. You're living in a potential autocratic government that depends on whether the person in power really wants to leave or not. Just thought I'd bum you out a little bit.
I like that answer. So, music is the soundtrack to our life. For you, Ari, today, maybe when you woke up this morning, what song best describes you? When you what song gets you going? If you need a go-to, you need to pick me up. What song are you rocking to?
Well, recently I've been putting on In These Streets, which is Premier and ASAP. I was just listening to the new 1942 by G-Eazy. Have you heard that?
Okay,
it's
I've heard
brand
that.
new. It's like
I'm still on a J. Cole album, but
yeah, J. Cole. I was listening to last night. The G-Eazy's like, I don't follow rules, and they don't like that. And and then the beat comes in, and you're like, is this song now or is this 20 years old? Because it has that timeless feel. Obviously, I go back to Jay a lot. I think 444 is in the middle tracks. You know, Family Feud and some of those tracks are just great. They get you up, but not overhyped.
Right.
My problem is I like music so much. If I'm listening to get too hyped, then it's like I'm bouncing. Like nobody wants to see me bouncing around.
Nah,
you don't want to see that.
That might be a good look. Listen, guys, check out The Beat, Ari Melber, weekdays, 6 p.m. on MSNBC. Ari, I appreciate you.
My honor to be here. Thank you, June. I appreciate it.
Keep it locked right here. This is 50.com, The Winner Circle.